has. So we have the bright, intense color and the light tint. Color plus white is a tint. Now, we're going to do black underlayer. If you're doing white, white goes on top of a color, black goes underneath. Yellow is your weakest or lightest color, so we're going to start there and we're going to go. And you see I keep turning my color wheel. That's because it's easier to turn your artwork than your hand, because your hand is sort of attached to your body in one place. Okay. As light as you can underneath the whites. Underneath the yellows, there's quite a bit of blue in black. So what happens is you put black underneath yellow and it makes kind of a putrid green, because yellow and blue make green, but it has the black in it too, and so it's a pretty nasty color actually. Alright, and now we're getting over to the reds. Reds are stronger. Red is a stronger value. It's darker than yellow, so it's going to take quite a bit more black to actually change to a shade. Alright, come around here. Violet or purple is your darkest color. So that's where you need to go the darkest with your black, but you can't go solid. If you don't have any white specks left, then there's no place for the color to go. And if there's no place for the color to go, then it just looks straight black. Instead of being a shade of a color, instead of being dark purple or dark violet, it will just look black. And then that's not, that's too much black, and then you have to go back and erase some of it so you can see the color. So you want to go darker over here, but you still have to see flecks of white. If you're going to mix a color on top of the black, you have to leave space for the color. Okay. I'm going to come back and add just a tiny bit over here, but still I'm going to leave room for the color to go. Alright. Then take your color pencils. We're going to go around again. Oops, let me put that back. We'll start right here, and you're going to press hard. So I'm starting with Orchid, and you're going to press so that there are no white speckles left, and the black and the Orchid blend together. Go all the way to the edge of that space. Move on to Raspberry, press hard, don't leave any white in it, because if there's white, it's making the color appear lighter. Your eye is going to blend the colors together as you look at it. Alright, let's see if I can keep these straight. We're going on to, oh, I missed one. Red. Okay, so I went from raspberry to red. Let me just make sure I got that right. Raspberry. Yeah. Red, red, orange. Oh! That's the other problem with making a color wheel too, is you have to press hard, and so sometimes get a little bit of breakage there. Okay, orange. Now we're going to have to come back and adjust some of these, but better to have to make it darker than to have to erase it, although that is how you can correct it. If you end up with the blacks being too dark, it is correctable. We'll fix it. And I'll show you how to do that. Okay, so we're up to mango. Yellow. If it takes you a little more time to do this, whoops, than it does for me breaking all my pencils, you can just pause. It's a nice thing about a demo. Oh, broke it again. These pencils have been around the block. Alright. There's that yellow. Moving on to yellow-green. And then we just have one more row to go. Green. teal. Cerulean. Then the ultramarine or regular blue. And violet. I know what I did wrong. Oh. Okay, so let me show you. What I did was, I think I put orchid over here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put the violet on top to bring it back into the right color. The shades are hard to tell apart, but basically you should be able to see that there is color there and that each one is different. That's your goal as you look around. I'm going to correct that. Okay. If they're done evenly, you see a dark ring all the way around, but it goes from one to the next seamlessly. But it doesn't look black. If it looks black, then you have to erase it and go back down to the paper and then build it up again. Let me show you how to do that. Let's say the teal is too dark. So this is what the wonderful little pink erasers are great for. And we don't have one in your box, but you probably have one around the house. You just take it back down to where you can see the paper, add a tiny bit more black if you need to. Then go back on top with the teal. And that's how you fix it if it's too dark. Okay? Go back, and if you missed any spots, hit those. Okay. Last step. This requires using the complementary color scheme. So you have the bright, light, dark, and now the inner ring is the dull, and they're called tones. So the most saturated here, the lightest, the darkest, tints, shades, and then tones, the dullest. And the way you make a tone is to use complements, complementary pairs. It doesn't matter which red you use if you're going across the color wheel, because green is so far across, it's the highest contrast. So it doesn't matter which red, but really lightly. Just like you did the second row, lightly, you're going to color it. Green goes for both reds. Going to color lightly. If you color too dark, it turns into brown when you mix it. Okay, so then I'm going to grab my reds and go on top. So raspberry on top of the green, and it should be a dull raspberry. And red on top of the green should be a dull version of red. And if you have the right amounts of the complement and the right amounts of black, it should look pretty much like this. Bright, light, dark, and dull, where the dark is darker than the dull. And if this isn't darker than this, then you add more black to this. Okay, green on top of the red. And you should be able to see a visible difference between the dull one and the bright one. And if you can't, then you simply go back and add a little more red back on top, and that tones it down and makes it dull. And then if you can't see a difference between the tone and the shade, the dull and the dark, then you go back and you add a little more black on top of the shade. You should be able to see 4 distinct aspects of the color: bright, light, dark, and dull, and you should be able to visually see a difference between each one. This should look like dark green, bright green, light, dark, and dull. So if this is brown, if you look at your color wheel and this is brown, that means there's too much red underneath. So you erase it, and then you put the green back on top. If this one isn't, if your shade isn't darker, then you just add a little more black on top.